Hello again. Long-term readers of the Bet Your Life sports trading blog will recall that I started off this trading malarkey by concentrating on scalping the greyhound markets. While this proved successful, I ultimately stopped it because I couldn't scale it up so that I was using decent sized stakes. There simply isn't enough money in the markets. I found myself sitting in front of a computer for 8, 9, 10 hours per day earning pennies per race, and I decided that the return, whilst it was welcome, simply wasn't worth the effort, so I moved on to other things. Recently, however, I find myself returning to the dog market, not for the purposes of scalping, but to lay back and more usually to Dutch. There are a variety of resources available to you that help you home in on which dog is the most likely candidate for a win. I'll post links in the description that accompanies this video, but for now let me run through what they are and I'll give you some ideas of strategies that you can use. First up is a site that you're probably familiar with if you do horse racing, and that of course is the Racing Post. It has an excellent greyhound site where we can access the cards that are coming up that day, and you can see a full list here with each individual race. Keep in mind that Betfair doesn't necessarily cover every single one of these meetings, so you need to check with Betfair via your application software or indeed the Betfair site. But if we just pick one at random, so we might as well just go for the first one on the list here, the Bellevue 720, and let you see what it does. First of all, it provides you with a summary of each dog that's running, its past performance at what track and so on. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see here it provides you with a post pick and a betting forecast. So that's the first option that you can do. You could think about following the Racing Post picks. I have to warn you, if you follow them blindly, you'll lose. You need to develop ways of identifying which races, which runners are more likely. Easier said than done, of course. But this information above is something that you can use to help filter things out. You can also use other sites that will hopefully either back up what you find on the Racing Post site or contradict it. Essentially, it's giving you another couple of points on the graph, if you like, in the process of making a decision with regard to what you want to do. The Racing Post site actually has a subdomain called Betting Racing Post, which is this site here. And again, if you go into the Greyhound section, you get the information presented to you in a subtly different way, in actual fact. If we go to the Bellevue first race, okay, just to compare it with the other site, scrolling down we get the same sort of thing here. We've got information about each runner, trap 1, trap 2, trap 3, and so on. You've got graphs indicating the performance of each dog, the trap record at that particular track, record in class, and so on and so forth. So there's a whole range of little graphical indicators that help to point you towards the dog that you need to make a decision on. And one of the things that you might want to use is this little graphical indicator here that runs a virtual race. So it's saying dogs 2, 5 and 6 are the likely candidates, and if you switch back to the previous page and scroll down the list, you'll see that 2, 5 and 6 doesn't tie in with the 3 runners that the Racing Post site said, so I'm not absolutely certain where they're getting their information from. But that may be another pointer, if you like, if you're developing a strategy. You can say, right, okay, we've got 4 dogs now, 2, 4, 5 and 6, that's been identified by the various parts of the Racing Post site. So we can certainly say, well, let's discount 1 and let's discount 3 and home in on those 4. Another site that you may find useful, which provides a similar information in the sense that it gives you 3 runners per race that it fancies, is the Sporting Life site at sportinglife.com. If you go into the Greyhound section here, you'll find a preview for whatever date is, in this particular case January the 5th, and it's got race by race picks. So if we click on that and go via the selections options, it will give you a list of every race in all the meetings that it's covering. It doesn't necessarily cover every single meeting that's on the go throughout the country, but that gives you an example. And this is a great tool because it lists every single 3-dog selection for every race that it's covering, unlike the Racing Post site where you have to go into each specific card, scroll down the list and find out which 3 dogs the Racing Post fancies. And in this particular case here, for example, Bellevue, it's saying 263. Now if you recall from the Racing Post, both pages, this one here, there's no 3 involved, this one here, 3's back in 4th place. Whereas the Sporting Life is saying 3 might get involved. Should flag up here, the NB stands for next best, and you'll see further down they've got this dog, the number 1 trap, is its nap for the Bellevue meeting this evening. So that's another opportunity for a strategy there. Just follow the Sporting Life nap and next best. That's another option. So there you have it. So you can look at combining all of these things. So now we have Sporting Life saying 263. We have the Betting Racing Post site saying 256, and we have the Racing Post site saying 264. So in other words, all of our runners are mentioned apart from dog 1. So there's a strategy: lay dog 1, for example. Or since 2 and 6 are mentioned in all of them, you could perhaps say, right, okay, let's just Dutch 2 and 6. So right away, by looking at these different websites, you can start to see the possibilities of some strategies coming out. Keeping in mind, however, that you shouldn't be backing blindly, because you won't win long term. One of the other websites that you may find very useful is this website here, greyhound-data.com. I'm not going to go through this website. There's a whole host of information there. You can find individual dogs, race cards, statistics, all sorts of information. So if you want to really get into your dog racing, put this website on your bookmarks. It can be very, very useful indeed. But let me just run through another potential strategy that you might want to think about. Let me just go back to the betting.racingpost.com site, because that's a useful site to demonstrate this. Those of you who follow greyhounds may be familiar with the idea that some tracks do occasionally seem to develop some sort of bias towards which traps will win. Now, that tends to be on a meeting per meeting basis. In other words, for example, Bellevue, just plucking Bellevue out the air here, Bellevue doesn't necessarily have a bias towards trap 6 100% of the time. It seems to be dependent on weather conditions, the surface that they're running on, and so on and so forth. And it varies from day to day, it varies from meeting to meeting, and indeed it can vary within a meeting. If the race organisers, if the meeting organisers think there is a definite bias developing, they will try to do something about it. So usually they may re-rake the surface and so on. A number of things that they may try to do to try and balance things up. But that's another strategy that you can think about doing. For example, You can't obviously decide whether there's a bias until you've actually seen some races. Now if I go to the earlier meeting today at Crayford, and we look at the first race at Crayford, you'll see here the first race at Crayford, the winner came from trap 6, second was number 5. Okay, now if I go to the next race, the winner was trap 6, 3 and 4. Next race, 3, 5, 4. So you'll see that 4, 5, 6 are starting to come into the frame, as it were, in the first 3 on a apparently regular basis. So we go to the next one, 5, 4, 6. Next one, 5, 3, 2. Next one, 6, 1, 2. To me, that looks like there may have been a bit of a bias in this race, in this meeting, towards the outside traps. Let's see if that plays out for the rest of the, 4, 5, 4, 5, 6. So there, as I said, it looks as if there's a bias towards the outer traps. So that's something else you can do. You could go into your betting software and say, right, I'm going to Dutch the outside traps. Now what I do, or I tend to do, is if I'm using this particular strategy, and it doesn't happen all the time, you have to wait for the first 3 or 4 races to go by at a particular meeting, I will Dutch not just the 3 outside traps, I may also Dutch trap 3, so I'm Dutching 4 runners. But it depends on the return I'm getting. I'd be looking for at least a 25% return on my overall stake for the Dutch. So that gives you another example. But what I'm trying to point out to you here is that by looking at all these things together rather than in isolation, you can start to draw a better picture of what's happening, and from that develop some sort of strategy or develop some sort of idea of how you're going to treat any one particular race. Anyway, food for thought. Hopefully you'll be able to use it